Hey, what's up guys? Pat here with another Tournament of Power Brew. This one is for the Trio to Dangers using Bergamo leader. Some of you guys have been asking me for a deck on this, and looking at your screen, you're probably looking at the overall configuration of the deck and wondering what the heck this is. You know, it just seems very stripped down and isn't exactly on theme. Well, in actual testing, a lot of the Trio to Dangers cards just aren't good, so to maximize the dogs, I decided to play to their strengths, and if we just happen to get the lock, that's great, but this is more of a, I want to be playing Bergamo and the dogs and try and find a way to win with that, so that's what this style of deck is. And for those of you that's not going to satisfy, I'll even go through most of the Universe 9 cards and explain to you my logic on why I don't play them and why I don't think you need them. So with that, let's get into the deck. The leader is obviously Bergamo. I like him a little bit better than SS3 just because he draws more cards. He obviously has when he attacks on the front, you draw a card, and then on the back he's got some useless effect about when you have Lavender and Basil in your battle area, your opponent's leader card can't attack the leader. Like, he's very much a vanilla leader. We're just playing him because he is Universe 9 and he draws cards. I'm not saying that SS3 isn't a better leader, because I almost guarantee you he is, but we're just using it largely to get the larger hand size for the strategy that we're trying to employ, which is just to rush our opponent down, and it also gives us access to arguably the best negate in the entire game. So moving on to the rest of the deck list. Mass Saiyan. This is going to seem very reminiscent of some of the other aggro lists I made. Veggies are really potent in this meta. You need some kind of removal. We are an aggro deck. This is 20k double strike for one that disrupts our opponent's strategy. And because you're an aggro deck, a lot of cards are going to go to the drop. So just, yeah, really standard. Shining Blaster. This is the primary reason to play Bergamo. This is a massive tempo swing. This format is very fast. A lot of people play things that cap out at 4 unless they're playing something like Gold Frieza or Rebrand. Almost everything in the decks that people are playing is 4 or less. So when they attack you, if you have the 1 blue open, it is possible to 2-for-1 them. You can Shining Blaster the attack and then bounce the second thing. And based on what they play, it's just, again, it's a huge tempo loss. Like, if they attack with their leader, you can negate, bounce a Kaba, completely destroys an entire Veggies line of play if they're going to try and Shigeshi Kale or anything like that. You know, if they attack with, you know, they're playing the Maidens deck, you can bounce one of the Maidens. Granted, this game apparently doesn't recheck for triggers on autos after the case, so if they have the Maidens, they attack with Rebrand and use Shining Blaster, one of the Maidens off the board, they still get the effect. I don't agree with that. I think that's something Bandai should change, but you know, I digress. Card is still incredibly strong. It is basically a 1 mana stop an attack, remove a guy, and that's very powerful in a game where you are trying to win quickly. Next up is Trio to Dangers Lavender. He's one of the 3 dogs. If you wanted to play the lock, you know, you could do it in this deck. He is largely in here just because he is removal. He is a decent body. He's like, you know, just barely on the cusp of being useful, but you can't understate how strong he is with Basil in play at the same time. Honestly, the lock is great, but having just Lavender and Basil in play by themselves along with a bunch of other bodies is enough to win the game. He just gets rid of blockers, he get rid of Kabas. He's largely just for disruption and just another body that we can swing and combo out with for damage. Sorrel, super combo. Obviously, we're going to play it. Basil's honestly the main beater of the entire deck. He basically is like a dual attack 20k single strike most of the time. So he's going to get through for decent damage. He's going to pressure quite a bit. And he's honestly the card I prioritize keeping alive the longest, because having 1 Lavender or 1 Bergamo and like 3 of this guy in play puts on quite a bit of pressure. So he is definitely the ideal 3-drop in the deck. And I honestly think he is the most useful of all 3 dogs just because he puts on so much pressure. Next up is Universe 9 Striker Comfrey. This is arguably the best Universe 9 card. It's between Basil, Bergamo, and this. But I think I would have to give it to this just because this card is 3 mana, play any card in your hand, and get a 15k body for free. So it is possible to play Comfrey and then pick Comfrey to play another Comfrey, and then play something like Bergamo. So you can just get a ton of value for 3 energy off of this card. If you're deciding to play dogs, regardless if you're trying to go for the lock or an aggro strategy like this card is a 4 of, 100%. It is the best Universe 9 card, or very close to it, like I said. Next up, Trio to Dangers Bergamo. just a 20k single strike, gives all the other dogs barrier if you have all 3 of them. If it's in rest mode, their battle cards can only attack this card, which is very good for stemming off aggro. It kind of just like large boards with a lot of attackers in general. Having everything be like a lightning rod to Bergamo lets you kind of consolidate your blocks, and the fact that he gets 5k every time they attack with a different guy makes it a lot easier to block. The reason I'm not all in on this dog combo is because it's really easy to disrupt with the amount of removal in the format. So it's not, even though you can go turn 2 trio Dangerous Lavender into Basil on 3, into Bergamo on 4, it's just not realistic, I feel like, against a lot of competitive players. And if you only have, like, say, Bergamo and Basil, the Bergamo doesn't have barrier at that point, and he's very easy to remove. A lot of things do get rid of things that are 4 or less in this format. So again, the lock is in here. The card is really strong, and this card is, even without the other 2 dogs, still powerful because it kind of forces, like I said, their entire board at this guy and lets you kind of conserve your hand, so that if he somehow, even if he dies, like just next turn, you're in a good position to keep on the aggression and still win the game. And then we have 2 Iron Skin Battler Chapil. You can put this guy at 3 if you want to take Mass Saiyan down to 3 or 2 even. He's largely in here just because he helps us self-awaken, even though honestly we don't need it because our leader just draws, period. So you don't need it that bad. You just get the tempo swing if they put you low on life with the 2 energy on tap, but for the most part, you don't really need to self-awaken. He is largely in here just because he is a draw 1, 20k double striker that can close out the game, and he can get rid of anything on your opponent's board. Just a strong card. The fact that he's a 0.5k means he's also great for early game, just throwing your whole hand on the table. As for red cards, Sand Cabo, standard 1-drop aggro beater. You guys already know. Furthering Destruction Champa. This card with Basil, great, because the card's already really big for how early it comes out. Basically, this is like, you're going to drop this guy and then Furthering Destruction Champa, and it's like, hey, it's like 30k usually on like turn 3 or 4. So it's pretty good. And then obviously, you get the extra attack off Basil. So these 2 cards in conjunction can get you 3 damage really easily. For Seeing Hit, broken card, can win you the game outright. Chaining 2 of these guys together, really, really good. Helps you keep your opponent off of specific cards so that you can kind of close out the game or assemble the dog lock if you're trying to go that route of just keeping all your guys having barrier and forcing them out of being able to attack you. Again, just another 0.5k. It's red energy for some of the other cards as well in the deck. And then also it's just good because you can also use it to keep them off of things like Kale. So if you are just tried to go for the alternate strategy in the deck of the dog lock, you can do that. But he's largely in here just because he's a really, really good card. Unbreakable Super Saiyan Son Goku. Just good defensive card. It's great for protecting Lavenders. It's good for giving your cards reach with getting them like the Basil to like 30k or Comfrey to 25k or even your leader to 25k. Just good at giving your leader reach or just protecting guys in general while maintaining card parity. So just really strong card. And then finally we have for Bewitching God Vados. If you get this far in the game where you haven't won by aggroing them down, you can drop Vados on 5. Realistically, expect to get 2 damage out of her, and you can possibly pull out like a Lavender and a Basil, which if you already have Bergamo in play, it just kind of assembles the all of their effects. You get the barrier and then the potential lock. I know that there are people who are probably wondering, well, I say lock all the time, but the energy lock card isn't in here. Neither is the field spell. You are welcome to play them, but I'll explain why I don't play them in a little bit. So I'm going to just go over now and show you guys the cards that I chose not to play, and I'll show you why. Supreme Kai Ro is the first one. He costs 3. You look at the top 2. If there's any Universe 9s, you put them into your energy area in rest mode. I don't want to pay 3 energy for a shot at whiffing. And even if I hit realistically, the average case, the expected value out of this card is 1. So I'm basically playing a 3-cost objection unless I absolutely hit the nuts and then I get both of them. Even then, format's so fast. If you tap out for this guy, and obviously like most of the dog decks I see don't do anything to progress their game state on the first 2 turns. They just play cantrips. If you play this guy on the 3rd turn, Ginyu veggies or SS3 veggies, you're just gonna get run over. Like it's too slow. And like I said, it has the possibility to whiff, and the expected value of the card is basically just objection for 1 more mana. So, it's cute. But I find that the Universe 9 decks that play it end up getting to like 7 or 8 energy like pretty quickly, but then they just don't do anything because they've been rushed down and are too far behind on board. We're already playing Bergamo. This Bergamo, I find that the lock is way too fragile. I don't want to play a 1-cost 10k for this card. By the time you can consistently assemble this card with the Bergamo leader, they're already in a position where they can play all their cards anyway. It's only really good if you're going to try and do SS3. And again, lock is so fragile. Too many ways to disrupt it. Mass Saiyan, Kale, a billion other things. Not worth the deck slot. Just, like, get rid of it. We're playing Lavender and Basil and Chapel and Comfrey. Hop. Same thing I said to my friend Zach at the local because he thought this card was pretty nice. If South Kai didn't see any play, card definitely won't see any play. That's all I really have to say about that. South Kai is literally the same card and has removal when it attacks. This card is basically the same thing without the removal. So, moving on. Oregano looks good on paper. It's basically you're dedicating 2 mana to playing 2 Majin Boos if you have a specific type of card in your hand. And sometimes your hand actually has, specific combo pieces if you're trying to play them anyway. Like if your hand is just all one of each of the dogs, you don't want to Oregano and get rid of the dogs unless it's maybe Bergamo because he comes out a little bit later. I don't know. Oregano just doesn't feel super great to me because he effectively is like playing 2 Majin Boos back to back. Yeah, he's a draw 2, but again, he's occupying more energy. You don't have the flexibility of playing, 1 or 2 Majin Boos, and again, you have to have a specific card in your hand. Like, it's okay fixing, but there's better fixing in the color. This guy, free blocker, we don't need it. He's irrelevant. Like almost none of these free blockers are relevant except for like Dauntless Kale and Mai, and that's because those go in aggro decks that basically they can just turn them into kill spells for 0 mana right away. We're already playing Sorel. Roselle is actually not a bad card, but I think that Cabo's a better 1-drop. I think that other cards in the deck are just better, and we're not playing enough Universe 9s to make this card have enough targets where we can hit it consistently, so that's what it is. Obuni. Obuni's not a Universe 9 card, but I see a lot of people play it in their dog deck, especially SS3, because they want to stay as pure blue as possible. This card is a -1. Just play Unbreakable Son Goku. Like, it's not going to hurt you to play 46 blue cards and 4 red cards. I just don't see Obuni being a good card. He's really overhyped. I just don't want to be playing 1-cost 10Ks that -1 me. So, yeah. So, Murichim, he's a vanilla. There we go. So, the last card here is Dangerous Triangle, which is the negate spell, the part of the lock. I see people play this card at 4. I'd play this card at like 2, maybe at most. The card's really brutal if you actually resolve it. But a couple of the deck archetypes in the the meta are things like Cell Chain and even Universe 7 Emperor Gold Frieza. People are playing that card now, and people are even playing the Universe 7 Goku. That's the 8-drop, and even the Ultimate Rare. Those are all game finishing cards that this card does not touch. This card is effectively energy 95% of the time. When you draw this card, you can play it for 1, and it's going to sit there, and each of your additional copies do absolutely nothing. So unless you assemble the lock, it doesn't do anything. And that's why I just decided to cut it, because no matter how hard I try against skilled opponents, they're just not going to let you get the lock fast enough with Bergamo Leader. And an SS3, it's still shaky there. Even though it's a little bit faster, it's still way too shaky. And things like a Mass Saiyan deck or a Cell deck or a Veggies deck, they can just easily stop the lock at every which way. On paper, it seems good, but in practice, it doesn't work out. So I decided if I was going to play Bergamo, I'm just going to maximize the good cards in my deck, the cards that are always useful, and I'm always glad to see them. Dangerous Triangle apparently is not one of those cards, so that's why I decided to not play it. Feel free to sideboard these if you're playing against a deck that's a bit slower with less removal. So I would probably still side it. I just don't think it's worth mainboarding. I just think it's better to just play an aggressive strategy based around Shining Blaster and Basil and Lavender. And then, like I said, you get the Bergamo as an alternative. So yeah, here's the deck one more time, guys. If you like it, give me a like. I have a feeling this is going to be one of those decks that people aren't going to really like that much, just because it's not centered around a lock that much. But I try and give you guys stuff that I think is reasonably competitive and you could take to at least a local and win with it. And I just don't see playing Dangerous Triangle and the 5-drop Bergamo, especially with the Bergamo leader, as an effective strategy to win a local. So there you go, guys. There's the Bergamo deck. I'll be sure to have something spicy for you guys next time. So until then, I'll see you guys then.